Hey guys, Roshi is here. This is the deck tech for our Danica Mindlink list. If you could toss me a like, comment, and subscribe, it would help me out, show my video to more people. Thank you. Alright, so we had a lot of fun playing this. This is I named it Imbeautiful Minds, which is just kind of a play on words. We're playing an Imbue deck, and we're also playing a Mindlink deck, so I came up with the name Imbeautiful Minds. It's kind of silly. Basically, at its heart, this is an Elysian mid-range deck. So what we're doing is we're just playing good Elysian guys, and then some typical Elysian, at least for the meta, we're playing Turn to Seed, we're playing Mageloft Huntress, and some other spicy options. But the general idea is to just play some of the good Elysian cards, but push this Transform Synergy and Imbue Synergy as hard as we can. And it ends up, you end up with this really spicy, like, synergistic pile of goodness. And I had a lot of fun playing it. We got our nine wins in Expedition to get the silver chests knocked out pretty solidly. And I was happy with it. It seemed fun, and we had a positive win rate, which, you can't complain about there. Just a cool way to... I know usually I play World Pyre, but hey, Mindlink is always another a fun, bad relic, and sometimes we gotta play with all the other fun, janky relics, just to, see if they still exist. And since Mindlink is an Expedition, and it might not be for much longer once the next set comes out, maybe it will be, we never know, but this is an older card, so it might get the axe. It's kind of fun to play with it while it's here, and while we can, as I think World Pyre will probably be in the format for a while. So, just to look at some of the cards in the list, Feral Mandrake, Imbue, when you transform one or more cards, play Feral Mandrake from your Void exhausted. Now, I underestimated this card. When I added it in, I thought it might be one of the first things I cut, and I didn't actually get to use it a lot in in most of the games, but in one of my games, I found out that it enters play from the Void, and it still is able to trigger Imbue. So what I did to my opponent is I played Danica, imbued something, drew a card, and then I played like a substitute or a reshape or something, got back my Mandrake, which imbued something else and draw me a card, and just got some really good value. I could have pushed it even further. So if you are able to kill off some of your Mandrakes early on in the game, just while you're playing and blocking and whatever, attacking, or just dying to removal, and then later on, you play Danica, and then any transform card, or any any transform card, like you can even Mageloft Huntress whatever and turn it into a treasure. And all your Mandrakes are going to spit black into play and trigger all their imbues and draw you a bunch of cards. So it's pretty sweet. Danica is also pretty resilient. There's not a lot that kills her once she comes down and imbues off of something. She'll actually pass the Jek test, which is cool. And yeah, so Mandrake, definitely pretty solid. It's weird that our Powerbase is good enough to actually be casting these 3-time and like 3 primal cards, but it's actually not that bad. You can do it just fine. It might seem weird, but it works. Mageloft Huntress, briefly talked about her already, but Plunder does in fact count as transforming, so it's gonna buff your Yorjas, it's gonna trigger Feral Mandrake, and Plunder is just a good mechanic to begin with. Also having Imbue and Killer, just solid to have. Our deck does not push the mono-colored synergy too hard like some other ones might, but Grodov's Burden's still a boss, and if you have Burden in play and you just play Mageloft Huntress and just suicide it into something, passing Killer around, even to just all of your few single target creatures we have, should be enough to pop off. Plus, assuming you play your Grodov's Burden and then you play a Mageloft Huntress, all your Mandrakes are coming back. So, yeah, pretty sweet. That'll give you a ton of bodies to pass weapons around with. And then Trailmaker might seem dumb. It might be dumb. Maybe this is supposed to be like Beseech the Throne or like Petition or something. But I just wanted more ways to get influence. And this seemed like the best way to do it. If maybe you're struggling a bit more than I did, and I actually didn't have much issues at all, maybe consider swapping Trailmaker out for Petition. But I like Trailmaker. It's a complete non-bow with the next card. But this deck, you have to sequence cards in this deck because some cards don't work well with others, and other cards work great with others. But to kind of make it all work in its like flowing shell, you have to be able to, make sure your sequencing is good. So, for example, Wump and Mizo, kind of a non-bow at Trailmaker. Especially because you probably need Trailmaker to hit the influence to be able to play your Wump and Mizo, at least early on. But it's not that really big of a deal. Trailmaker, it's okay if it just gives us influence and then dies to a snowball. Like, it might seem dumb, but like it's already done its job. And in this deck, I tend to just trade my Trailmaker off pretty quickly because I know, especially if I have a Wump in my hand, I know it's not gonna live long. And Blightmoth's so huge in the format, so there's a good chance you play your Trailmaker and it just dies immediately anyway. But Wump and Mizo is an absolute house in this deck. And one of my games, I think our first game with this deck, I forgot to add a market, but I just played 2 Wump and Mizos and just punched our opponent in the face with them until it won. Also, Wump and Mizo does transform, and so when it transforms, it'll trigger your Mandrakes and trigger your Yorja, which is sweet. Speaking of Yorja, when 1 or more units get transformed, she gets buffed, and her mastery actually does 2 transforms. So, nerfing one of your opponents by 2 cost and buffing one of yours, yeah, your opponents just really don't want to let you have this. I had people using premium removal spells on my Yorja just to keep me off of it. Like, a couple times they played like turn 2 Ice Bolt against me on my Yorja just because they didn't want me to curve out with it. And it definitely has curve out potential in this deck. We've got all of these 2-drops, so I guess it's not that great of a curve. But what I mean by that is, we slam our Yorja and then like start playing like Turn to Seeds and Reshapes and Rain of Frogs and stuff. Or like Yorja into Mindlink and like start playing those. And then Yorja's going to get out of hand pretty quickly and, either be able to hold down the fort or start attacking. And if you trigger that mastery, you might just win the game on the spot because it's a pretty... it's going to buff your Yorja again, who's already attacking. And then it's going to buff something else on your team and nerf something on your opponent's team. So the one time I think I pulled it off, it won me the game. So I like it, and I think Yorja's pretty sweet. Danica, Overwhelm, Imbue. When you imbue a unit, draw a card. Heavy into time on this one. Wump and Mizo aside, we are actually a base time deck. We're playing a time etchings market. Most of our power gives us time. And that lets us get Pharaoh Mandrake and Danica going. So no, we're not playing Helio, but Danica's pretty sweet. Having Overwhelm is very, very solid. So oftentimes, like, we'll have these big, beefy boys and girls with Overwhelm, and eventually we'll just have these huge minions, play Danica and Imbue on top of one, and then now we've got this massive blocker that's going to threaten the turnaround and smack our opponent. And another fun thing, with all of the Imbue we have, we can attack our opponent with our best minion and then just imbue it. So, like, if they don't block and they decide, oh, I'm just going to race, then you play your Imbue unit and you'll stun your biggest unit and that just attacked. So, like, you know, let's say I attacked with a Cersei or something. I'll play Danica, stun my Cersei. Now I have a 9/10, and I draw a card. And if they kill my Danica, the Cersei will actually untap. So whatever unit you're stunned, even though it was tapped on your turn, the act of losing Imbue will just unstun it. So you still have a blocker that's huge. So it puts your opponent in a lose-lose scenario, and it's pretty solid. I feel like Danica is very underrated. Often you'll see people playing it with Mageloft, but I don't think anyone's tried Feral Mandrake, and I think that's a shame because they work so well together. Even if you just took these cards and added like Desert Alchemist and Turn to Seed into the deck, and maybe like a Market Rain of Frogs or whatever, or like a Market Reshape, that would be enough Plunder and Transform and Imbue to just be able to pop off in any Elysian shell whatsoever. So you don't have to push as hard into the Transform as I do. Like, you could take this way less and just play this in a more like, take this package and just add it to a more traditional Elysian deck, and you just stomp. But for this one, that's not what we did. Cersei is just thick, and it transforms, and doesn't die to Annihilate, so there's not a lot that really effectively deals with Cersei in Expedition. So, yeah, just slam them, punch people in the face with them, turn stuff into frogs. Amusingly, Mindlink will actually give you pigs. If you have Mindlink in play and you're like attacking and blocking and like Cersei's doing his thing, the pigs will actually go into your hands, so you have some nice little 2-drops to play. So it's just added little synergy on top of just already being like a big threat we kind of want to be playing anyway. So Cersei earns his spot. I actually had to craft these 2 Danicas and 2 Cerseis to build this, but it was a long time coming. And next up, we've got Substitute, just a cheap way to deal with massive units. Sometimes you don't always have the Turn to Seed handy to like deal with Severins and stuff. So having a Substitute to hit a Grodov Stranger or like a big Severin or an Ikaria or something, or even something, just whatever, like transforming a unit for 1 power. Like, our deck already likes Transform, so it's okay to give our opponent a 3/3 oftentimes in exchange for like getting rid of whatever their best minion is for 1 power. Pretty hefty tempo swing when you do that, and oftentimes it'll be giving you a 3/3 dinosaur or buffing Yorja or whatever. So I don't mean to keep like flipping back to each of the other cards every time I go over a next card, but that's just kind of how much synergy this deck has, is that all the cards kind of work together pretty well. Etchings, plenty of ways to trigger etchings. Mandrake, Trailmaker, Wump, Danica, Cersei. So usually not an issue. Sometimes you're just using it to get a time sigil early. And then for our market, while we're on the topic of etchings, From Below, Predator's Instinct, Grodov's Burden, Thundering Carousel, and Shimmer Pack. I literally never grabbed Predator's Instinct once. You could probably cut it or add something else if you wanted. But I think From Below was great. I grabbed Grodov's Burden and Thundering Carousel quite a bit, and Shimmer Pack was always my go-to over-the-top troll. Shimmer Pack's really funny with Mindlink, so if you transform even one of their units, you'll add another Shimmer Pack to your hand, and you can just keep doing it. So, yeah, that's fun. Next up, we've got Reshape. Having Revenge makes this pretty solid. I underrated it when I first started playing, and then I went up to 4. It's actually perfectly okay to just blow your first Reshape early. And I think one of the mistakes I made was not doing this often, is play your first Reshape. You don't need to get full value. Just hit something so you live long enough that it flips back around, and maybe when it comes back around, you've got that 6th time ready to go, and it'll hit your whole board or flip their whole board. One of the cool things I did with Reshape a few times, by now you've probably noticed that I'm playing a lot of Imbue units. So sometimes what would happen is I'd have this big spaghetti Imbue chain where I've got only one untapped minion, but I've got 6 or 7 tapped minions on my board that I just permanently stun that I can't attack with. And maybe I'm in a scenario where I'd have lethal. And so what you're able to do is reshape your board, and then all the imbues go away, all your units untap, they get buffed, and then they get their cost increased. At least sometimes it's not a buff, and then you're able to just slap your opponent, and they're probably not expecting it. So I did that a few times, and it was pretty solid when it happened. Turn to seed is turn to seed, and I know that's kind of redundant, but this card pops off. So even with Mindlink, you actually get the seeds and you can use them to block, which is sweet. And it's just one of the best removal spells in the format. We'd probably be playing it even without Mindlink. And one thing I'd potentially like to see is maybe I was mentioning that I never use Predator's Instincts. Well, we could just add a Hermit Gardener to our market, and rather than needing to kill our opponent's seeds, we'll just play our own and just play Hermit Gardener. So I might try that the next time I play this deck, but it's just kind of funny. Rain of Frogs, if you weren't aware, is hilarious with Mindlink. As long as they don't have Aegis and they have something in their hand you can target, every card you transform with Rain of Frogs, including cards in their void. So if you hit something in their hand that's also in their void, it's going to create frogs. And those frogs that get created will immediately be drawn by us. But they have Destiny, so they'll just flip into play. So sometimes, like, your opponent will have played some removal against you, and their void will be kind of like packed with some good removal or whatever. And maybe they don't have anything on our board to kill. So we play Mindlink, or we'll have our Mindlink in play, and we'll play our Rain of Frogs, and maybe there's just removal stranded in their hand, and we'll Rain of Frogs it, and it'll transform that removal spell, and then the same, if they have a Torch in their hand, or maybe a Turn to Seed in their hand, it'll, not only will it hit that one, but it'll hit all the ones in their void and generate frogs, which then flip into play and draw you cards. So Mindlink and Rain of Frogs combined have this juicy little combo where you're drawing cards whenever you cast it. So it'll actually replace itself and be less of a detriment. And that's kind of a common theme with all of our transform cards is, we're able to get that little extra mileage out of them because we're putting the creatures we transform into our hand. And I suppose I don't need to say this, but have you ever reshape your opponent's entire board and then draw all of the units they just got? It's insane. And then you're going to revenge this back into your deck and do it again later. It's really funny. It's a ton of value, and it's hilarious. So Powerbase is probably exactly what you'd expect it to be. Nothing fancy going on here. These sigils could potentially be Amethyst Wastestones, but Milos is a card, so we're not going to do that. And the more sigils we have, the less likely we are to whiff on etchings, and the more likely we are to have our Seed of Wisdoms come into play untapped. So that's why I opted to, maybe not play 2 Waystones in this slot like I might have in a different format, maybe without Milos in it. And then Cobalt Waystone, if you wanted, this could just be Primal Sigil, but I feel like it was kind of free to add 1 or 2 of these. I had more than enough time that, we can slide 2 of those in here and just guarantee maybe some untapped power, while also getting the hefty upside of having access to Aegis in our deck. And that's the deck. It was fun as hell, so enjoy. Hey, thank you for watching. The gameplay video should be down below or off to the side or something. Check that out if you haven't already. And if you enjoyed this, please toss me a like and a comment. Let me know what decks you're into, any deck you want to see me play. Or you could hop in at the stream at any time or hop in the Discord for that. Always happy to give feedback and advice or, play whatever. So, please do that. And if you have not already, toss me a subscribe. It means a lot and helps me out. Thank you.